to order because we do have a quorum. As a preliminary matter, this is Hillary Rapeport. I want to confirm that everyone is here and they can hear me. Can everyone hear me? Just give me a thumbs up. Yes, excellent. So this open meeting of the Historical Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order March 12th due to the coronavirus. In order to mitigate transmission, we're directed to suspend public gatherings. We have suspended the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order is posted with the agenda materials. It allows us to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless it's required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, the Historical Commission is convening by video conference on Zoom. The meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by video conference. People will see you, don't screen share, anything you broadcast may be captured by the meeting. The supporting materials provided are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. I actually have not posted the presentation because the presentation will be in the select board meeting materials and there aren't any other materials for this meeting. Everyone, just be sure to mute your phone. If you need to speak, raise your hand. This is a small meeting, shouldn't be an issue. Okay, let's get started. Looking at the agenda, thank you everyone for being available on fairly short notice for an impromptu meeting. I called this meeting because we'll have the opportunity to address the select board next Wednesday. At least, that was what I was told and I haven't heard anything differently. I guess the agenda will be posted today. So we'll know for sure if we're on that schedule. But I just didn't want to go in front of the select board without a quorum of our group having been able to look at what we put together. I did have to submit it last Wednesday. I consulted with Holly about it and went ahead and submitted that. But there's nothing new in there. It's just a revision of what we've given other meetings. But there'll be, who knows what will happen. Hopefully there'll be a discussion and opportunity to answer questions. And I just wanted to hear from you all before going ahead. We did have that meeting in July that Holly attended with the Streetscape. So before, we'll address this at our next meeting, but I thought this would be an opportunity to maybe share some thoughts on that and to get any update from Holly about working with the HDC on becoming a CLG, because that's also something we need sign off from the select board. So I'm very interested in bringing them along with this discussion. We can't do this without them. They need to give us authority to become a certified local government. So I didn't want to be unaware of what was happening with our other, the other half of the preservation function on Nantucket. And lastly, I had a chance to speak with the individual whose name is Peter Stott over at the Massachusetts Historical Commission. I actually just got off the phone with him before joining this meeting about updating our surveys. And we did have a subgroup, which was Nikki and Tom and me, and we've had one conversation. So I thought it would be helpful just to kind of move things along prior to our next meeting to talk a little bit about that. So to start with, the first item on our agenda is the update on the streetscape. So our preservation engineer, whose name is Matthew Gonski, came to visit, and we had a full day. We had 2 tour groups. The first group was Rob McNeil, Dave Shampoo and Ben Shampoo from the Tree Advisory Committee, Marty Hilton from Penn, Ray Pohl joined, Penn joined, and also Jeff Paddock, who was one of the financial sponsors of the study. He joined as well. Am I missing anyone, Holly? I think that's the group from the first half of the day. And then we had a lunch, and then we had another walk around with a different group. Holly, Rob McNeil, and I continued with Matthew, but then we were joined by Jason Bridges, Mary Bergman, and Brenda McDonald from the Commission on Disabilities.
And Stephen Welch from the HDC.
And Stephen Welch, sorry, who also joined for the lunch from the HDC. So I thought it was pretty great. I mean, we had like many different perspectives. We had terrific attendance. Rob really wanted to join for the whole day. Holly, do you want to share any comments with the Commission and the public about the meeting? Oh, we can't hear you, Holly.
My bad, sorry. I thought there was a great group of interests that was represented because of course, you know, it's not just roads, it's not just our history. So it was, I think that was great. We had, you know, select board members, HDC members, historical commission members, DPW staff, preservation groups, the accessibility board, and historic property owners along Main Street. So I thought that was great. And it sounded like Matthew was just a sponge, just listening to everybody and really taking it in. And I can't wait to see what he comes up with. Really, you know, I think it was just an overall good conversation because, you know, looking at all those different aspects are really important. And I think it got everybody to maybe think outside the box, if you will. So I thought it was really productive, and I'm looking forward to what he comes up with.
Yeah. Yeah, so he will be able, I'm pretty sure he'll be able to join us on the 21st to give us, I asked if, you know, he's going to produce a report for September, but I asked if he could give us kind of a verbal preview of the report. And I also just want to share that he did make a comment. He talked a lot with Rob. I mean, there were many instances where Matthew and Rob were doing their engineer thing and talking about materials and the strength of different stones. That's been a big focus, you know, as we've had, we've read and had a position that the concrete is potentially a peril to the softer schist. And, you know, I just want to preview for you all that I think Matthew is going to say, like, don't worry about the concrete. I think that's what he's going to end up saying. And, you know, we'll see, we'll listen to what he has to say. And that's why we hired him, because we wanted to hear his advice. But that was a comment that he made to me, which is, you know, the stone is actually really, really strong, and reusing the stone is, it's not going to be a problem. So I think if anybody has concerns about that, a different opinion, this would be the time to do some research, consult about some of those different opinions, and be prepared to ask some questions of Matthew, because I think that's probably what he's going to tell us. And after all, we are interested in getting to the truth and to the best approaches for rehabilitating our street, I guess.
Hillary, are you saying that like the situation on Fair Street where they the curb was set into the concrete, that is reversible?
So I think Matthew feels that if you wanted to chip that concrete off that stone, you could do that successfully and not damage the stone.
That's great news, because I mean, it was heartbreaking to think that, you know, that stone was lost forever.
Yeah, I know other people, I mean, I know Penn, I don't want to speak for people. We're going to have a discussion about this, but I know there are other people who don't agree with him. And I'm going to try to be sure that those people are at our meeting on the 21st. And, you know, we'll see what he says, but that is a comment he made to me.
Thanks.
And yeah, it is really good, because if, you know, if we feel that, like, the Department of Public Works, if it's very, very important to them to bed everything in concrete and we can get comfortable with that, that's going to make setting our historic goals and coming to agreement a lot easier.
Yeah.
Curbs are a lot different than cobblestones, though.
I don't think anybody wants to set the cobblestones in.
Okay, they've given that idea up.
Yeah, no. But there was, again, you know, we'll hear from Matthew, but we did talk a lot about the stone dust. He had a lot of experience and opinions. He took samples of our natural earth. He took samples of the stone dust. He took photos. We showed him areas where the recent repairs had been. We showed him areas where the stones had lain undisturbed for a century probably. And, you know, he took notes and pictures and all of that. So I think we're going to hear all about that.
So exciting.
I was thinking, I'm thinking about our historic goals and the DPW. We sent a letter to the DPW that we worked on together in one of our meetings, kind of encouraging them really to make the necessary reversible repairs to the areas that were really falling apart, especially right around Pleasant Street. I don't know if everybody's been aware, but they have been doing that. They've been doing it for the past couple of weeks, which is great because I could take a video of the Victor Branham crew and I sent it to Matthew. So he's actually has some footage of how they're doing it, which I think would be really helpful to him in preparing the report. I just wanted to be sure that you were all aware that whether our letter had anything to do with it or not, they are doing what we asked them to do and what lots of people have asked them to do. Yeah, I think it's good.
Yay.
Hillary, I'm just curious, was that letter that you provided to Rob with our, well, not necessarily the letter, but the maintenance and rehab that you all came up with, was that sent to Matthew for his comment and review, or to give some?
You know, Holly, that's a good question. Obviously it should be, and I loaded so much information into a Dropbox, but let me make a note to check because that document has been under review.
I just think that would be a good idea for him to look at and bring his expertise to it.
Absolutely. I mean, that is absolutely the whole point, is that that was a draft that we've done without, you know, just with research. I don't want to say without expert opinion because we did a ton of research, but now we're going to have, you know, expert consultant advice. But further to that document, I have just felt that, you know, we've never really gotten a response to that document. And I just wondered, is there a way that we could put this information, you know, as you get more and more confident and more sure about what's important, often you can present things more graphically or more concisely and they have more impact. So one of the things that I've been thinking about for our next meeting is that we might actually turn that into like a slide where we break up the components of the things that are important to think about when thinking about rehabilitating this historic pavement. You know, basically like distilling the principles so that people, you know, that the Public Works Department and the Roads and Rights of Way Committee and the town can think about it like more programmatically. They can think about it as a set of principles instead of as like an endless list of things that they need to do. You know what I mean?
I think that's a great idea. I would just recommend getting Matthew's feedback first, so they're not duplicating efforts and having to redo it again.
Yeah.
That would just be my opinion.
Right. Well, maybe I could put something together in advance of the 21st. And if Matthew's going to join us on the 21st, we can ask him to talk to us about it.
Hillary, I might just add that from the Commission on Disability that the sidewalks are pretty critical too in terms of getting, you know, usable, especially the Free Bricks area, you know.
Yeah.
That sidewalk is just impassable. So it's
right.
For us, it's a real priority.
And you know, it was interesting, Nikki. We stood at that exact spot and talked at length with Rob and Ray and Matthew. And they all said, you know, this area is actually pretty easy to fix because the bricks, like the way the fence works, it has a stone slab. So you can actually, you have a lot, it's very forgiving. The elevation of the walk is very forgiving there.
How about the tree roots?
Yeah, so the tree guys were there with us, and you know, they want, what they want to do is remove the pavement. They want to use an air spade. Have people heard of air spades before? It's a jet of air that you know, you could run it right over your foot. It would do nothing. It would just be air, but it blows all the dirt out. And they would basically use this air spade to excavate all around the roots so that they could see the structure of the roots and figure out which ones they could trim. And then they want to fill it back in with what's called structural soil, which is a specific kind of soil that's used around trees in urban environments that feeds the nutrients. It allows the nutrients in the water to penetrate further so that the roots will not lie on the surface. They will go where the water is, and if the water is guided down, the roots will go down.
Great.
So that would be, you know, part of the plan.
Wow.
So is the idea that if the stone goes up and the sidewalk goes up, the curb goes up and the street goes up, everything goes up for the roots?
Well, I think that is something that needs to be figured out on a case-by-case basis. And the ADA rules are really an issue there because, as you know, the cross slope has to be no more than 2%. And to flatten these sidewalks, you need to raise them. And that's a problem with the curbs. And it can also be a problem with the cars because if the curb is too high, the car door won't open. So it's really like a place by place, you know, we've got however many miles of streets and we have to look at them foot by foot.
You know, if it's almost impossible to meet the ADA requirements in specific areas, they can always apply for an exception or a variance, you know, on a case-by-case basis. So if there's a section in front of one of the buildings that the cross slope ends up being a little steeper than 2%, they can apply for the variance, and in some cases it could easily be granted. So it's not a definitive, you know, parameter. It can be a little variable.
Yeah. And I think this is where we can really help because, you know, by having a commission on disabilities understand this and be okay with it or not okay with it, you know, but basically be the ones working with the historical commission to say to the state board of architectural access board, you know, look, the Commission on Disabilities has looked at this. We've talked to the Mass Historical Commission. The local historical commission has looked on this, and like we're all on the same page. That's really, really different than, you know, a contractor or a consultant engineer, you know, lobbying something in that doesn't have community support behind it.
I just have to be careful which hat I'm wearing at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you need to grow another head, Nikki.
I'll try.
All right, so I'm going to make a note to check in with Matthew to work on this idea of more of a like a priorities and programmatic presentation of our goals so that they can think about the themes and have it not be so like detailed and prescriptive such that it's actually too dense to even understand. And we'll get Matthew's feedback on that, and that might be something we could present to the right groups and get Holly's feedback on that. And Holly, maybe you can have a look at that as I develop it before the 21st.
Okay, I just would really like to see, you know, Matthew's take on those draft principles before coming up with some, you know, how, because I agree, we would want to have whatever is provided as tools, if you will, for the town to be user-friendly, to be able to be used. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I'd hate to, spend all the time on something that's going to be just eventually revised anyway. So.
Right. Well, we won't present anything until, it takes his feedback. Okay, so that's sidewalks. Moving on to discussion of reports to the select board. You know what, before we talk about the report, I'd love to get this update. The report's going to include a discussion of surveys. So I want to flip the agenda a little bit and talk about the update on the certified local government initiative and the survey recommendations. Holly, so CLG, moving it forward. I mean, I think the ball is in the HTC court. I'm not really sure. What do you think?
So it has not been able to been discussed. I don't know if anybody else follows the HTC meetings, but they're 4.5, 5 hours long, and it's at the end of the agenda, other business. So the last couple of meetings they have not been able to get to it. Yesterday it was on their agenda, but then it was a quick meeting. We lost quorum status, so we couldn't even finish everything that was on there. So needless to say, it has not been discussed. I don't think it might not get to next week either. We don't have Ray as the chair discussion. So it is on their agenda. I'll have to see if this is something that maybe they can move up on the agenda. But again, that's up to them to decide on that. However, I do want to mention that, bringing it to the select board's attention for next week. You have that in the slideshow, which is good. It's one of the goals and priorities of the commission. And in my little required blurb to the select board that goes in the packet that everybody will see, I've also outlined it as well. And I think it's, fairly clear on the reasons why that we are, promoting it, why we want to be certified local government. People are going to want to know, well, what do we get out of it? What do we have to do? So, I know that there's a time frame and I understand that, but I also do want to just point out to the fact that this place is extremely busy. We are back to numbers pre-COVID as far as the amount of applications that go through this door, even though we're not open to the public. This place is busy. So it is, just something to consider that, we are working as best as possible. But, with that, it's different. It's a different atmosphere. But it is, something that needs to have that mutual agreement, that MOU. You might all remember when we had the discussion, and after the discussion, I reached out to MHC just to make sure, are there any other versions of the MOU? No, it isn't. That this is what they use. This is their typical boilerplate. And really, it's going to just be a clear understanding of what it means. What is it that's what they're going to want to know, as well as the select board. What is this? What's the bottom line? So, and in my little report, I did indicate at the bottom of it that the certified local government is it's an application that would require a final sign off by the select board. So they're aware that it would be a mutual agreement between NHC, HDC, and then final approval by the select board.
And Holly, I think maybe I'm naive about this, but I think the fact that it helps us get access to grants should be emphasized.
Absolutely.
And among all of the rest of this stuff.
You're absolutely correct. So in my little report, I just said becoming a certified local government administered by the National Park Service will provide access to federal funding, technical assistance from MHC, and promote our commitment to historic preservation, which has proven economic, environmental, and social benefits.
Right.
Which
underline
touches...
the access to federal funding. I'm being cynical, but let's do it.
No, it's
that's attention on this somehow.
That is hitting the nail on the head at the end of the day. I think everybody has understood where we're at, and that updating our surveys is paramount. And when it comes from the town's perspective, how is it going to be funded? How is it going to be paid for? And, I've mentioned this before, the planning directors, included that within the last town meeting, but things were diluted, if you will, because of the pandemic, and only the very, very important things had to go through so we could function as a town. So that was not there. But if we can be access to funding that's outside of Nantucket, that we as taxpayers, as citizens of this country have already paid for, then obviously that would be great. So.
Holly, I have a question about the being seen by the HTC. Ever since our joint meeting, this is something that they've been aware of. Has the MOU been distributed among the HTC board members?
It was in that original packet from the June 30th meeting. So yes. Yeah.
I'm just thinking that, if I submit a project to the HTC and they don't have time to see it in the new business meeting, it's thrown onto the back of the old business meeting, and like weeks wouldn't go by without it being seen. Is there a way to have this be treated like a project, and that we won't just go weeks and months without it being addressed?
I can ask.
It doesn't seem like that big of a thing. Like, aren't they just saying yes or no or why?
Right. I get it. It's just a matter of how their agendas are set up, that it's technically an other business, because obviously they're there to review applications, from applicants, and that is other business on their agenda. Just like that they're trying to update their mission statement that they have on their website. That's been put on hold. It's just a matter of. I'm sorry?
They didn't get that done either.
No. So Thursday meetings are very difficult. I can tell you that. And Thursday meeting was kind of take care of the stuff that we couldn't get to at 9:15 on Monday night. So, of course, it also has to do with this format. This format takes a lot of time. Granted, I think a lot of us have learned real quickly on how to handle it, but I can tell you, I handle all the applications up on the screen, and that can be a little cumbersome. And I know for, trying to zoom in for people so they can see it and read it and all that fun stuff. Angus, you understand, we do that with the advisory board. So this whole format does give us a little time issues with it, but I think we're all handling this as best as possible. So I just wanted to let you know that yes, it's still on the agenda. Will it be? Will we get to it on next week, next Monday? I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you.
I know you're doing your best, Holly. Thanks.
Thank you, Georgia. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Holly, it's with the HDC, and I know you want this, and you pushed it forward, and Andrew has been supportive as well. So this is really, I think there are bigger issues here, because it's not just the MOU. It's all kinds of the update to Building with Nantucket in Mind is money that we could spend to help our community understand systems and access information, and that's been, how long ago was that grant given? 4 years ago? Was it 2014?
I believe so, something to that effect. Yeah.
4 years ago. We talked about it last September. It's been nearly a year since they said, well, we need a joint committee. We don't want you to do this. So there's, there are issues.
There's just a lot of stuff going on, bottom line. And, we're going to be doing the kickoff for the MVP design guidelines. We've been still working on that remotely with our consultant through the pandemic. We got an extension from the state. We're going to be having those public meetings in September, and I'll get you guys more information on that so you guys can be included. But again, there's so many different aspects that are going on with the town in general that it's, you know, it's we're doing the best we can. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Holly. The staff report, can you just explain, you know, I wasn't aware that, first, thank you for doing a staff report, but I wasn't aware that there was a required staff report to the select board. What is that? Can you explain that to us?
So if you are familiar with select board packets, anytime a committee, commission, board, staff submits anything that's a discussion on the agenda, there's a sheet. It's the same thing. It's a boilerplate, if you will, for everybody. It's called agenda item summary. That is filled out, so it indicates who the staff is, what's the subject, executive summary of the item that's on the agenda, staff recommendation, a background discussion, impact, whether it's environmental, fiscal, community, or other, board commission recommendation, public outreach, connection to existing applicable plan, i.e. the strategic plan, master plan, what have you, and then attachments. So basically it's a summary of what's being provided to them in the packet.
Can you share that with us, or are you still working?
No, it's done. I had to have it completed. It will be, I don't have it available on this. It would take me a little bit to do that, but it will be in the packet.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll see what it says. Hopefully we got a good report from you, Holly.
Oh yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, yes, staff recommends adoption of the revised mission statement and welcomes a discussion on the proposed priorities within the and the goals. So yeah, it's really just re-spitting out what was included and where we're at. So
sounds like a good practice. Okay, so that's the update on the CLG survey recommendations. I reached out. Hang on, I'm losing my. I'm losing the Zoom. Here we go. I reached out to the MHC to talk, just to learn about, you know, we talk about the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System a lot, and I just wanted to understand, like, how does information get in there? What do we need? Because Nantucket is really unusual in that we have these amazing nonprofits that are really interested in surveying buildings and are doing it independently. So the Sconset Trust has done all of these really detailed surveys that are like National Register level surveys, but they hadn't even thought about putting them in MACRIS. It's just not, that's not the reason they were doing them. They were just doing them to protect their buildings and because it was important for their mission. HIN does surveys, NPT does surveys. When they do surveys for an easement, they do end up in MACRIS, of course, because the easement is done in partnership with the state. But I just want to share with you what I learned, which is Peter Scott is the point person. He's really thrilled to be working with us. I sent him scans of the Sconset Trust material. He said, this is amazing material. This is way more than anything we would like expect to get. This is phenomenal. He said, the thing is that it needs to go in our inventory form, our B form. And it looks like that would just be cutting and pasting. So he was really interested in having us like figure out how to get that into the B form. And he said, when you get one into a B form, show it to me and I'll let you know, is this right? You know, I'll give you feedback before you do all of them. I don't know how many house histories Sconset Trust has done, but he said, you know, I'll work with you to make sure it looks right. So what happens is, you know, they'll accept these surveys from anyone. They'll accept them from individuals, from consultants, from commissions, from municipalities, from nonprofits. They like to see, what they check is to make sure they're complete. They want to see a certain level of information. And he gave me a list of what that is. And then he looks over it and then he sends it to their database group. And their database group checks the GIS, it checks for obvious errors. Get this, it then takes up to 2 years to get it in the database. So they are seriously backlogged in their database group. But he did say, you know, some partial information accuracy. Yes, the GIS stuff takes a little longer. And he said, and of course, if something's really important, we could prioritize it. But I think the message for us is that the fact that there's a backlog with Macris should not discourage us from going ahead and doing this, working with Peter, that we want to keep the information locally and coordinate, Holly, with your group about, you know, how we keep this information, and Macris, you know, once we get it over to Peter, we know it's in the queue and we're aware that it will eventually get into Macris, and that's where it will live in perpetuity. I also asked him about some of the thoughts we had. You know, of course, we're going to apply for grants. He said many times, you know, you can apply for grants, you can apply for grants. They have a formula. They grant $250 for a survey. That compares to the Wisconsin Trust is paying $1,500 for a survey. So you can see that he said, you know, our rate is low, and some people pay more. You may choose to pay more. But basically the expectation is that they will give you a certain amount of money, which may not be enough. And, you know, whoever's doing the survey will find a consultant, arrange a deal with a consultant for how much these things, you know, how much you're going to pay for these things. I guess there obviously there will be a procurement process in our case, and then supplement to whatever extent we need to supplement. I asked about the idea of maybe setting up like a citizen science program, working with nonprofits. The nonprofits would lead that program and we would just advise on it, where we would train people who wanted to do research on their own homes or other homes that they loved. And he was a little circumspect about that, as Holly was. He said, you know, I don't want to tell you not to do it, but I'm not sure it will work. And he said, you know, I said, well, what if we trained people and then they kind of collected the information, and then people who actually had credentials assembled and reviewed that and did the architectural review portion. And he said, yeah, you know, that could work, but if you want to do this, you know, give it a shot, but work with us on it. You know, don't go running away and do 100 houses. Like, set up your system. He said, I'd be happy to talk with you about it. I'd be happy to look at the output and I can tell you if it will work or not. So that was the feedback on that idea. And then I asked him, you know, are there historic district commissions in other towns that when an applicant wants to make changes, you know, wants to apply to the HDC for a certificate of appropriateness that requires that the applicant hire a consultant to fill out the Form B. And he said that he was fairly sure that that did happen, but that it was really a question for Chris Skelly. So that was the feedback from the MHC. I thought it was very encouraging just to, you know, have a dialogue with the person who's actually in charge of this database, so that, you know, ultimately whatever we do, we have to make sure that it is accessible in perpetuity, generally for the future in this database. And, you know, to hear that from him, and that we might have a lot of information living in our various nonprofits, PIN, NPT, Transit Trust, other places that we could help, you know, shape and get into this inventory form, because it really will not go into Macris if it's not in the inventory form. Nikki, do you want to comment on our comment about this? Because you had a plan, you know, that we talked about.
Well, I'm just referring back to what you just said. It seems like, you know, we've talked before about, you know, basically updating the whole database, which means every house on the island are basically in town. And that's starting to sound a little unrealistic to have all of these go through the Form B process. I mean, they're backlogged as it is. And if we had another 500 houses, it would take forever. So it sounds like this Form B process is more of a one project at a time, one house at a time updating that probably would get done during the HDC process, not en masse. Is like, let's do 100 houses in town. Does that make sense?
I don't know, Mickey. I mean, when they write these survey grants, they write them to groups that are doing areas. What do you think, Holly? I mean, this is really your thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a certain level, I know what it takes to do research on historic structures. That's where I started before I went to school for preservation. So it is a process within itself. Actually, matter of fact, I used to work with Betsy Tyler on some projects way back in the day. But, I think we would need to have a plan. Having funding is definitely going to be the source of where we go. Do we want to, because yes, it's I think the whole fact that we are NHL, the entire island, so it's a little cumbersome in that regards. But maybe looking at seeing what we have as existing HDC surveys from 1989 that we know need to be updated and come up with some type of priority system, whether it's looking at the old historic district and going through the surveys. I mean, I think too, not everything in Macris, if it was done within the last, say, I think 15, 20 years, those are with the Form Bs that they're required to have. But our HDC surveys that were done in 1989, they have them, and they do not have, they're their own form. So I think Nantucket got maybe grandfathered or got a special approval, or before they even created the Form Bs. But I have come across where there's a overlap in information. That's I can go pull the file over in the drawers that we have here in the office, but I couldn't find it online. I don't know what the reason for that is, but anything that MPT's done, anything that PIN has done that has been submitted, you are correct, it definitely has gone on the Form Bs. But there's a lot of them that, even from the 89 surveys, there's a lot of information, but you can't read it because it's done in pencil. It wasn't done in, wasn't done in Word format. So those are going to have to be not only obviously updated to provide that information, but also to make sure that information is correct, because there's been some instances too where that's not correct. So it's going to be a cumbersome project, regardless if we do it on a case-by-case basis or we actually do it as an actual project with a consultant. I would say let's start small, but let's go in, maybe base it on what we already have in the system. I don't know. This is something we need to really go over.
Another thing to keep in mind about this is we could survey areas priority. As far as protecting Nantucket, the thing that I feel that when a building that is important comes up and an application gets proposed, people can get exercised about it, and there's an opportunity to do something, like 10 Beach Street, for instance. Holly, you spent a lot of time on 10 Beach Street. Mary spent a lot of time on that. The HSAB has spent a lot of time on that. But it would really be helpful if there were a Codfish Park area survey. By the way, I should let everybody know, we asked Fran did a little research on the area around 121 Helmet Pond Road, And remember, we approved her survey and said that we should send it to the HCC. Well, that application came up on Thursday, so I actually did send it to the HCC, not with any directive, just saying we thought this would be helpful to you. But that would be an example of, that's not an area survey, but that's sort of directionally an area survey where we're looking at different areas on the island and saying, this is what's important about this area that we want to preserve. And when you HTC think about approving a structure, you should think about the feeling of the area, and this is kind of what you see there and what is there and what's important about what's there.
I
So
think
maybe,
that one was a start of an area survey. I mean, I wouldn't, I think that was just a good start in the right direction for that.
I wouldn't call that an area survey, but
Right.
as far as what I'm proposing, because doing the surveys of each individual building, to Mickey's point, we might want to be reactive with that. And maybe one of the proactive places we could start are area surveys. I'm just asking if that would be helpful. Maybe that would be a good way to start. I don't know.
I think we have to prioritize,
Yeah.
pick certain buildings or areas and prioritize.
How
And maybe that, sorry, maybe this is something that needs to be requested by, or we ask the advisory board, NHC's advisory board. There's a lot of people that have great experience that do this. Ask them what they think and go from there. That's what they're there for. So.
Yeah. Well, this will be a topic for our next meeting, so we can certainly go through that. That'll be, I think, the streetscape and the surveys are two things to tackle in our next meeting. Holly, how did the HCC, did they discuss? I didn't watch the meeting. Was that helpful to them? They didn't get to it?
It was going to be continued to next week, but that actually, the applicants on that are not going to be available next week. So it's been continued to I think the following week.
Okay. But our information will be part of the record when it gets proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was sent to them and it will be in the record.
Okay. So great. So with this discussion of surveys and the CLG stuff as background, let's just talk about the report to the select board. Holly, could you let me share my screen? I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my, you can see the PowerPoint. I'm presenting it now. Okay, so, I'm a little confused about what the select board is, how much time they're going to give us, if they're going to want all this background. I figured at the very least, I would present this because it would go in the packet and be part of the public record. We asked for time to present this, and their response was, well, we'd like to hear the mission statement. So I'm going to go in with the attitude that the mission statement needs a little bit of context, because people really don't know, well, what is the Historical Commission? And when I say people, I'm including the members of the select board. Like, some of them know, but I'm sure some of them don't know. So this is what we presented before to the HDC. And yes, I fixed the spelling of your last name. I apologize for that. Then this is our mission statement. And I need to go over oh, this is working. Great. So if they let me, share my screen and present it this way, I'll be able to present it in pieces like this. But this is what we approved, and this is now on our website. And I thought it was useful to talk about this. This is not new. You guys have seen this before, but it's a really important point. And thinking about what we might do, thinking about telling them, what we have done. I thought I would add, Milestone Road. It looks like they're not going to put up the duplicate pedestrian crossing signs. So, we actually did manage to get a lot of those signs removed, which I think.
Hillary, I think I've been counting. There are maybe 12 new signs instead of the original 87. So I think we have a win there. But
yeah.
I will say all the new signs are the pedestrian and bike crossings at the bus stops.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't think they're useful, but we just, if we had to settle for something, that's what we had to settle for.
Well, and Georgia, there were going to be, for each pedestrian crossing, there were going to be 2 new signs in each direction, and they've settled on 1 sign.
One, yeah. And they don't have all of those no passing signs that they were proposing. So
those were the categories that they axed. The no passing, the extra, so before you were going to drive up and you were going to see boom, boom, 40 feet away to, pedestrian crossing ahead, and then immediately pedestrian crossing here, and they decided that.
No, to get from 87 to 12 is a big achievement.
I think it's more than 12, Georgia, because they put up all the new speed limit signs and all the new deer crossing signs, and I know there were 14 of those, but yeah, I mean, they definitely responded. They also took out the granite curve at Milestone Crossing. I don't know if we had granite curbing there, and they removed it and replaced it with that.
Yeah.
It's just. So we can go over what we've done, but then this is really what we want to get the select board support from. And this is what I want to hear from the commission about. So going to this number 2 communication plan with the select board, I mean, the select board has designated like ex officio members on committees and commissions. And I would really like to have the select board appoint somebody to our commission. I don't know what you all thought about that.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because I just put communication plan with the select board. I didn't go so far as to put, requesting an ex officio member, but what it would mean is, like, remember in our February meeting where Matt Fee came to our meeting, we would have, I don't know if it would be Matt, the select board will volunteer and they'll decide who gets to go. But like, they have a member on the NPNEDC. They have a member on the Coastal Resource Advisory Committee. They have a member on the Housing Trust. What other committees have members, Holly, do you know?
There's a lot.
They have a lot of committees. And then at the end, what it means is that someone from the select board is like up to date with what you're doing. And you have like a direct communication line to the select board, because on every agenda at the end, they have committee reports. And then the member can be updating the committee if there's something really important.
I think it would be a great idea.
Somebody would attend all of our meetings.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
They'd be invited, and yeah, if they're there, they would be expected to be attending.
Right. I think it's great if they're willing to do that.
That's an excellent idea.
I mean, the pitch that I would make is that there's no select board involvement with the HDC. So, the only way the select board stays up on what the HDC is doing is when somebody appeals, an applicant or an abutter appeals the case. And, preservation is so important on Nantucket. Every plan that anyone produces talks about our historic fabric and our historic materials and our national landmark. For the select board to, not be, there really should be a link. There needs to be a link, and we have to decide what that link is going to be, whether we show up every quarter and talk to them, or we show up when we have something going on that you want to hear about, but then maybe we get an ex officio member.
I think it's a great idea.
Or what if the ex officio member meets with us every quarter instead of every meeting? I can see that they have a lot to do already, and now we're asking them to go to one more meeting. So maybe if we cut those meetings down a little bit, it might be a little more appealing to them.
Yeah. I think I would just say that we want to have something clarified, and it could be a range of any of these things. And we'd like to hear from them about what they propose.
Why can't we ask for their participation to see if one of their members can join our meetings?
Yes.
And if there's pushback with the understanding that it's every meeting, maybe it's every other meeting. If that's pushback, but basically, like, let's not start with, our idea of what is not too demanding of them. Let's just throw it out there and see what we can get.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll ask for that. And then, I have to say, and I know I'm being recorded, but it's frustrating to have a joint meeting on June 30th with the HDC to ask for a simple, a signature on an MOU that says you do what you do, we do what we do, and we're going to talk, roughly every quarter or every blue moon or whatever, however often we talk, and to have 6 weeks go by and there's just absolutely no movement. And moreover, I mean, we know that they always have more work than they can handle. I actually think we have a crisis. I don't know if you all noticed, but there was TJ resigned, so there's now an open seat on the HDC. Nobody is running for the HDC. It's just a bear. It's a total bear for a volunteer to have to do this. The HDC is so important to the protection of Nantucket as a historic landmark. It's so critical. So I wanted to hear from this commission about what kind of tone, I don't know, how can we advocate in a way that is productive, but that's not, going to accept this, that we do nothing. I think we need our select board ultimately is responsible for protecting this National Historic Landmark. They're responsible for running the town, directing the town manager, and the town manager is responsible for running the town, which includes the planning function. I'm very familiar with the arcana of how that's structured, but at the end of the day, we have to look at results, and we have to look at, at our goals, setting goals and achieving them, not just saying, well, I guess it's not going to work, or there's nothing we can do. We are here, we are the adults in the room. So what can we ask for? What can we do? How should we do that? Sounds like you guys don't really want me to go there.
It's a big one to throw out at the end of the meeting.
Hillary, can you kind of say that again, just precisely?
Okay, well, let me bring it down to earth a little bit. So we're going to brief the select board on our priorities. Our big priority is updating Nantucket's historic savings. And I will tell you that I see huge obstacles with being able to be successful with this. And I see Holly, working extremely hard in her function, being responsible for an incredible breadth of stuff. Um, I guess I would like to know if we have the support of the select board to set this goal and do what we need to do to achieve it. Because I'm not willing to set a goal that is not achievable or that is obstructed by insurmountable challenges.
Do you think they're going to not agree with what our goals are? Are you concerned about what we're asking of them or proposing that we do?
I think our goals are really reasonable, and I think they will agree with our goals. The question is, if you set a reasonable goal and there's an insurmountable obstacle to achieving it, what are you willing to do? Do you just go away and give up?
Yeah. I think we have to look at the
What would you like to see us do?
Well, I think there's everything in moderation, right? I think we need to look at what you all have done in the year's time frame that you've been as a commission, the goals that have been achieved and you know that you'd like to achieve. I'd like to see achieved. I think, you know, there's a moderation of having goals there for us to say, okay, this is what we would like to do for our NHL. But at the same time, stepping back and understanding that we might not get there, you know, as quick as we'd want to, or we might have to zig when we have to zag, you know. I think as long as there's support to achieve the goals that have been outlined, you know, but with an understanding that it might not happen tomorrow, I think that's the moderation that needs to be understood, because it would be I personally think it would be a little bit different, just a little bit, if we weren't into this pandemic that we're in right now, really and truly. And that's taking a lot of time. New processes and procedures have taken a lot of time. So it's not the typical business as usual across the country, especially on Nantucket, even though we're in a bubble. We're in our own little unique bubble. So I just ask for, I guess, patience, understanding, and you know, ask the select board for their support on these preservation priorities that you all have laid out.
Hillary, is there anything specific that you're thinking about as far as unsurmountable obstacles that are between us and our goals that the select board can help with?
Well, we will not become a certified government if we don't have an MOU with the HDC. And
not pressure, but the select board to specifically ask, you know, can this please be a priority? Can you get this in the next meeting or the next 2 meetings or something, so that we know that we're moving forward with something that really is kind of boilerplate, like it's not a huge project for them to figure out. Is that what you're thinking?
Or you know what, if it is a huge project, we'd like to understand. Maybe it is a huge project for them, and it's something we don't understand. You know, we don't understand why this is huge, and we should talk about it. So, yeah. I guess what I would like to, I really should have written up some sort of a statement and had you all approve it. But I guess what I would like to do is to lay out these goals. You know, one thing that's not on this slide is to ask the select board what they think about when they think about preservation. You know, what would they like to see us do? Certainly, I want to make a note that I would ask that.
Hillary, I think that's a good idea to ask them. I think also, I'm wondering if this request to the HDC isn't something that ought to be done maybe behind the scenes rather than publicly?
Well, we've already requested. I don't understand what you
I mean,
mean.
by a select board member or by members of the select board individually
Yeah.
rather than publicly? I'm not sure, but I'm just floating that idea.
That's a good
Well,
point, George. It's really has to be a public forum to just, well, I guess they have to all be together, right?
I mean, if it, especially because it's administrative and in a way it's embarrassing. It just might be something where somebody should bring it quietly to the attention of somebody else on the HDC and say, look, just get this document signed.
I think it will be discussed. I'm just,
What do you think, Holly? I mean, does this need to be it's almost like,
No.
we don't want to make it embarrassing.
no, and I thank you for saying that, Georgia, because, you know, I hope you all realize that, you know, I am, with my definition of my job, is liaison between both commissions working together. So, you know, I respect everybody. You all, there is a role for both commissions to work together. The certified local government is a program for just that would help emphasize the protection of our NHL. So I see the goal. Reason why I asked for moderation and patience is because it's not business as usual. There's a lot of applications. The Zoom format makes it a lot longer. It's on the agenda. It's whether or not we're going to have a full board for them to have that full conversation. I personally don't want it to be talked about if we don't have our chair at that meeting and we have the vice chair discussion next week. So it's going to be pushed back another week. I would recommend not making it I would just emphasize the fact that it requires an MOU between the HDC and the NHG, and that's something that's being worked out. I would leave it at that and not make a big deal out of it. And again, I appreciate you, Georgia, of saying that, because that would not be a good thing. We need to show that there's been communication, that you've had a joint meeting, that, you know, granted they're not as often as I think everybody would like, but this also shows how busy we are, like the busiest historic district in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That needs to be emphasized, I think, because, and it kind of even emphasizes the fact that, you know, granted, I can't speak to what happened of when we had a historical commission and it got defunct, but it goes back to the reason why the importance of you all and what you bring to the table, and why it's important to have a historical commission and the working relationship between the two, because at the end of the day, they don't have time to do a lot of this stuff. Unfortunately, this whole goal that we're trying to achieve is going to be the benefit of everybody and the entire NHL, but at the same time, they don't have the time to do it right at this moment. So again, that's why I'm asking for patience. It's on the agenda. Hopefully we'll get to it in the next few weeks. And then at that point, we can have this application that we can submit to the select board for their support. But I think it is good to identifying it now, the actual certified local government and what that means, what that entails. And just say, look, it requires this MOU between the two commissions. We're working on that, but this is what it would do for and leave this whole discussion outside of the select board. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. Holly, I certainly respect that. And I think that, I think we've gotten a lot done in a year, and we now have this goal for the next year. But I will tell you, if we are not making progress on this goal, you know, this is our opportunity to say, this is our goal and the clock is ticking. And at some point it is embarrassing. And you have to say, like, we can't just keep going this way, something needs to be done. But we're not there yet. You don't think we're there yet. We'll give it some more time. I do have in my mind this, you know, building with Nantucket in mind. We started that discussion in November. It just totally died on the vine. And that was starting it in November at your instigation, Holly, because the grant has been sitting there for 4 years. And Andrew says he's going to give the money back. You know, he doesn't have to, but I don't blame him. Why would, you know, if you can't get something done, you put the money back in the pot. And, but then again, we didn't have a process kind of we're committing to a goal now. So this will be an opportunity to then, if in 3 months we still don't have our MOU, we've missed the grant site. And we should be applying for these grants regardless of if we have it, but this is probably a year where they will only go to CLT. So we'll put this out there, and then at some point though, we have to recognize that you have to talk about why things aren't happening. And we're not there yet, but we will talk about that when the time is right.
So I just want to let the commission know on this agenda item summary that staff is required to fill out for anything that's submitted to them. I mentioned that the impact of whatever that application is or whatever that discussion is. And I indicated to you all that the impact could be environmental, fiscal, community, other. And I indicated all of them. They also want you to know what the connection of that particular item is to those plans. Well, it's actually connected to their strategic plan. It's connected to our master plan, and it's connected to a pending sustainability plan. So, I think they'll see this. I think that will resonate with them. I don't know if everybody remembers, but last year when we had our Keeping History Above Water conference, on Nantucket, which was a dream come true for me. We had a select board member there, and that particular select board member emphasized the fact that environmental and our preservation of our island is part of their strategic plan. The strategic plan that the select board has adopted has a mission statement. Preservation is included in that mission statement, just so you're all aware. So, I think our select board members, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they understand the good that's coming out of these proposed priorities. Again, I think it needs to be emphasized and understood that, we're doing the best we can. It's not business as usual. The fact that we've been able to even meet remotely since, HDC at least since April, that's fantastic. You got to remember, for 5 months, this whole pandemic has put a kibosh on so many different aspects of life in general. So I feel like that needs to be mentioned and understood.
Holly, I think all those are really good points. I am reminded that you were the one who brought the whole idea of a CLG to us. Like, I didn't even know what that was. And the more you talked about it, and the more we met and discussed it, the more it made sense. And then when we were really digging into it and the logistics of moving forward with it, it became kind of embarrassingly obvious how, that we are such a significant historic district and one of the few places in Massachusetts that doesn't have a CLG. So now we've figured out the missing pieces, and we've shown up with our pieces of it. And in the end, for me to change the color of my front door to be more important than the HDC signing what is necessary to move forward on this, I think is disproportionate. I feel like there's got to be something that has to be recognized as more significant than just another project. And there are many projects, and there have been, there will be, but this is, I think, more significant than any one project that we ever see at the HDC.
And I respect that opinion, Angus. I really do. Again, it's, we'll get there. We will get there. I think this is a fantastic priority. I've always scratched my head since I understood what CLG was, even when I was in high school, wanting to know why we weren't one. And then in college, learning more about it, going, why isn't Nantucket one? But, this is great. We all know the benefits of it. We'll get there. We will get there. Just have patience. That's all I ask.
So, okay, I will present this and I will mention this bullet point that it requires an MOU. I'll mention that we had a meeting June 30th. The MOU is a boilerplate that comes from we got it from the Mass Historical Commission, and it basically, says, I'll summarize that. And, we're hopeful that we'll get that back soon. It's in their court. Which kind of makes it clear that it is in their court, but is not overly pointed or provocative or anything. I'll be sure to be nice about that. And then emphasize that, we really would like to have this. This will come before the select board, so this is an opportunity to ask questions, express any concerns, but we really hope that they'll express their support and, help us get this done, that it would be good for Nantucket. And they can refer to the staff. And then also talk about the inventory forms, and that this would also be something that, we'd like to see happen on an opportunistic basis. And, we have a plan to figure out how to make that happen. It's in the works.
Now, I had a question about the select board meeting. Who's planning on presenting besides Hillary? Anybody else going to be there to speak?
Normally we would all show up and we would call a meeting and we'd be in the audience and everybody would be there. With Zoom, first of all, it's unclear why, some people are on video, some people aren't. The crack presented, and they had Mary on video, Mary Longacre as the chair, and she just presented. So I was assuming that it would be that again. And of course, it's a live broadcast, so anyone can listen.
Right. Okay. I was just wanted to make sure.
Is that okay with everybody?
If that's okay with you, Hillary, I think we're all interested and will want to show up at the meeting. But if you would be kind enough to be our spokesperson, I think that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I was planning on doing it. I can do it, and we don't need to be worried about open meeting. No one's making any comments.
Right. That was just my biggest question. Obviously, everybody can listen and be involved.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, terrific. I think we have our agenda for the 21st in terms of the update from Matthew, the revising the priorities, and it's going to be all about surveys. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe by then, well, I guess probably by then we won't have any feedback from the HCC because it sounds like Ray's going to take a vacation, a well-deserved vacation. And but still we can talk about it and get feedback from our, I'll try to get the advisory board there. Anything else for today?
I think we had really good discussion in this short impromptu meeting.
Yep. Very good.
Okay, thank you all for being available.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Okay.
Thank you all.
Are you going to adjourn?
Yes, can I have a vote to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Yeah. Okay. I guess you want to join as well. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Holly. Happy Friday.
Thanks, Hillary.
Bye.